This is part 4, the last part of the Savana build, and I'm going to talk about the painting and staining, the wall panels, the door panels, the ceiling, some electrical, and the plumbing. After we had all the cabinets built, the bed built, and everything built, we tore everything apart and started the painting and staining. We chose light colored paints and stains because we wanted the inside of the van not to seem so dark with when all the doors were closed. I did finish off all the wood with like a polyacrylic finish. I put a lot of layers of finish on the tabletop and the counter because I knew that spot would most likely have water spilled on it. The inside of the van took a lot of putty and sanding before we decided to paint it. We used a rubberized spray-on coating for underneath the gray water area, the side step, and the back area of the van. It hasn't peeled off in any way, and the fact that it's black really hides the fact the floor of the van is right there. We chose white wall panels because we wanted the interior of the van to be bright. I did my best to line up the horizontal lines on the panels when they came into corners. I made cardboard templates and test fitted them before I used them to trace onto my panels. We bought little white caps to cover all of our screw heads, that way you wouldn't notice any of the screws. The ceiling is just cedar tongue groove boards, and I screwed every other board that way allowed for expansion and contraction. The little wire hanging from the ceiling is actually the original dome light of the van. Finishing out the ceiling to the wall panels wasn't very easy. It took a lot of scribing and a lot of head scratching. The center hole up in the ceiling is where eventually the dome light was mounted. I think the ceiling and the walls help bring a lot of light into the van. My first attempt at making the door panels didn't work out too well. I traced the door in plastic sheeting, and then I transferred that onto a cardboard template to test fit the door. The plastic sheeting also helped me pick spots where to anchor my panels. We stained them, we finished them, and we painted all of our own screws for the door panels. We trimmed out all the rough edges of the door panels with a nice thick rope. It hides all your little imperfections. This is what happens when the first threads of your battery are stripped out, so you need to find a longer screw to hold on your terminals. These are just pages from my sketchbook of me planning out my electrical system inside the van. Electrical was the first thing I did in the van. I started in January of 2019, and the temperature was probably about 10 degrees outside. I knew I had to plan out my whole electrical system because I needed it completed before I started building the interior of the van. I also knew I wanted a backup camera, so I bought a cheap stereo with the backup camera capabilities for the van. I remember this day being particularly cold, and it actually required 2 electric heaters that day to keep me warm. Another thing too, when I was working in the van in the winter, I'd always take off my shoes in the front of the van. That way no water would be brought from the front of the van to the back. That way I can keep the minimum moisture down inside the van. I have a switch that allows me to switch the power to the stereo to my extra batteries in the back of the van. And I also have a switch that allows me to turn on my backup camera while driving down the road. I also added a voltage meter, that way I can tell what my leisure batteries are at all times. This is my first battery setup. I'm really not going to explain exactly how it all works. There's a lot smarter people out there on the internet that can explain it way better than I can. It took me a lot longer than I expected to hook all this up, especially in such a confined space. This particular battery system was charged by a split charge relay. We hadn't had solar yet, and we never had any problems with our battery power running out on us. We did add a battery charger, so when we had short power, we were able to charge our batteries. This switch was used to cut the battery off to the isolator. This is the main on-off switch that cuts the power off to all the components inside the van. After months of waiting, it felt great to hook the batteries up to the lights. I added switches for pumps, lights. I also added a little charging station and another voltmeter that went over the counter. That way I can monitor the batteries. And of course a little charging station above the utility closet. We eventually did get solar panels and some lithium batteries. That was a fun day setting that all up. We eventually got an inverter which allowed us to run AC appliances. This van didn't come with any power door locks, so I eventually installed some. The only electrical problem I had in the van is that a plug I bought's wire melted and didn't even blow the fuse that was in line on it. We bought a thermometer for the van. Up in the cab on this particular day, it was a hot day. It was 95 degrees in the cab in front of the van. With all the doors closed, including the pocket door, the back of the van stayed at 73 degrees. The drain to our sink is just a P-trap, and this actually does prevent gases from leaking up through the sink. Just pull out the drain and lift up the jug. Our faucet just runs off a 12-volt pump that sucks water from our freshwater jugs. Our faucet had hot and cold settings, so I just teed them together. This concludes the last part of the van build. Thanks for watching. If any questions, go ahead and leave a comment. If any criticism, keep them to yourself. Thank you. Bye.